Hello there, and good evening, and welcome to the Jim Bohannon Show from Westwood One Radio. Profiler Pat Brown is making a return visit to talk about her latest book. The difference tonight is that you may have trouble buying it. It's an e-book called Profile of the Disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Till recently, you could buy it from Amazon.com, but no more. We understand the book is available from Barnes & Noble online at their initials, bn.com, for their Nook, e-Nook reader. Pat Brown, two stories here, I guess. Number one, the story of Madeleine McCann, and number two, the story of you and Amazon. For those, let's just start at the beginning. Okay. What is the profile of the disappearance of Madeleine McCann all about? Let's assume that people have forgotten exactly who Madeleine McCann is.
Right. Madeleine McCann was a little 3-year-old girl who was on vacation with her parents, Jerry and Kate McCann, and their friends, 7 of them, and there were also the brother and sister who were 2 years old. And the McCanns and the friends had a habit of leaving the children unattended in their vacation apartments while they went over to the bar restaurant for a few hours every evening. And the last evening, Madeleine disappeared, and she has not been seen since. It's been 4 years now, and no one knows what happened to Madeleine.
Now, then, you put together an e-book, Profile of the Disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Before we get into all that you have put forward to posit about the disappearance, what happened with Amazon?
Well, what happened was there's a kind of a controversy going on concerning the McCanns over the 4 years. The controversy is, did the McCanns have anything to do with the disappearance of their daughter, or was the child abducted by some predator or child sex ring or somebody who wanted a little child? There's two camps over this, and there were a lot of suspicious circumstances. An abduction was never proved to have happened. So the McCanns became suspects in Portugal, what is called aguidos, and then they left Portugal, and since then they've been looking for their daughter, and they established a fund to search for their daughter, and this was all going quite well. But when people started speaking up and saying, you know, some of us actually think the parents might be involved, they were shut down because the McCanns hired Carter Ruck, which is like the biggest libel solicitors in I don't think maybe the whole world, but certainly in Britain, and they would sort of sick this law firm on anybody who said, hey, you know, I question whether they could be involved. They sued the detective on the case when he put his book out and got an injunction to get it off the market. And so people have stopped speaking out, whether, you know, about their opinions, because they're afraid of Carter Ruck, they're going to get sued. And so the media no longer says anything negative about the McCanns. They question nothing anymore. And so Kate just put out her book called Madeleine, and after I read her book, I decided I would do what people wanted me to, and put out a profile of the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, and put out a theory of what I think happened based on the evidence that exists. Mm-hmm. And I did so, and about 5 weeks after I put it up on Amazon, it vanished. And it vanished off of Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk, that's the British one, and out of Germany as well. So vanished everywhere. And people said, what happened to your profile, your book? And so I wrote Amazon. I said, what happened? Where'd it go? And they said, well, they took it off for legal conflicts. And I said, well, what legal conflicts are you talking about? And they said, well, we need you to change the title and all the content.
Otherwise, it's just what we were looking for.
Exactly. And so I'm like, okay, would you want to explain this a little further? And then they sent me the letter that said they had received a letter from Carter Ruck, the solicitors of Jerry and Kate McCann, who said that I had libeled their clients, and therefore, until we worked it out, the McCanns and I, and agreed that the book was not libelous, they were no longer going to sell it. So that's when it disappeared off at the market.
Wow.
Yeah, it was rather interesting.
I was trying to think of another instance of something similar to this, and I'm at a loss. I don't really know of anything quite like this.
Yeah, well, I think this is kind of a new problem with the self-publishing world. Now, I have 2 other books on the market published the last one came through Hyperion Voice, and when I wrote that one, which is called The Profile of My Life Hunting Serial Killers and Psychopaths, came out in 2010, I did a lot of cases in that book, and before they published it, their lawyers went through it with a fine-tooth comb. They made me turn over all my files so that they made sure that the book was acceptable and we weren't going to be sued over it. So when Amazon sold that, they already had Hyperion Voice saying it's an okay book because our lawyers have been to it. Besides, you're not going to get sued, we will. But with self-publishing, where's the gatekeeper? So Amazon's like, well, nobody looked over this book. There's no publisher except you. So quite frankly, we're running a business and we don't want to take a chance with Carter Ruck. So it's kind of funny. People say when Carter Ruck comes after you, you've been Carter Rucked.
Interesting. So in this day and age, what you're essentially saying is that as we enter this whole brave new world of the non-gatekeepers, that if you've got enough money and enough lawyers and a willingness to throw your weight around, that you can essentially shut down your critics.
Exactly, and that's what has been happening with McCanns. They have effectively shut down anybody with an opinion that they do not like, and they don't like mine.
I must tell you that I got an email.
Yes, you did. I'm sure.
Yes, I did, with a .uk address attached to it. Please be aware that the ebook Ms. Brown is promoting is full of misinformation, contradictions, and an imagined scenario. Ms. Brown has a well-known dislike of the McCanns, particularly Kate McCann, and for the past 4 years has made regular, inappropriate, and acidic comments about them on social networking sites.
Well, that's actually accurate. Sometimes you can't disagree with people who hate you. But yes, I have blogged for 4 years. I have a blog called The Daily Profiler. It's not very daily anymore because I'm too busy, but it's every monthly profiler, I think, now, but I haven't changed the name. But I often talk about cases like I do when I do television. I do commentary, and I analyze different cases, and I try to stick with look at the evidence, and here's what I'm thinking, and I try to put it, I always say it's a theory, this is not fact, this is a theory, which is what all profiling is, and it doesn't say anybody's guilty of anything. Yes, I have been fairly critical because from the very beginning, there was something rather peculiar about the story, and of course it starts with leaving 3 little children alone in an apartment unattended, which is called child neglect. So it's kind of hard to be nice about that, in my opinion.
Well, it is hard, I suppose, to do that. Among other things in this email, they claim that your book is done in an effort to convince people that Madeline is dead.
Well, I would...
What are the odds? What are the odds?
Well, this is kind of funny because, well, in a very sad way, one of the reasons Kate McCann supposedly sues people is because she says no one has the right to say Madeline is dead because that keeps people from looking for her. Which sounds like, if you're a mother, you can sort of see where she's coming from. But the fact is, the chances of Madeline being alive, even if she didn't die of an accident in the apartment, which is what the police believe, and what I think the evidence lends to, she would likely be dead because if she was abducted by somebody, it would be like a sex predator, a child sex predator, and they usually kill a child within an hour. And the concept that a child is going to be targeted to go into a sex ring and be taken around the world is not very likely. And on top of it, the McCanns put together a campaign which featured the eye defect that Madeline has, which is called a coloboma, which is, kind of defect in the eye, which you have a dark line coming out of the pupil. They put that as part of the publicity. Well, if I were a child kidnapper and I had this kid with this very obvious defect, I'd get rid of the child very quickly because she could be identified. So if she wasn't dead, you're going to kind of make her dead by doing that. So